Hey, fellow comic book fans, and welcome to episode number 7 of the Brazen Comic Book Podcast. I'm Charlie Chipman, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts, Dave Robbins.
Hello, friends.
And Ben Peterson.
Hello.
On today's show, we'll be discussing Sideways number 2 from DC's New Age of Heroes, Dry County number 1 from Image, Eternity Girl number 1 from DC's Young Animals, and Port of Earth volume 1 from Image. Be sure to like this video to show your support, and click the subscribe button to become a member of the Brazen Bull community.
Today is Wednesday, March 14th, and it's New Comic Book Day.
All right. So we're going to start off the podcast today with Sideways number 2 from DC's New Age of Heroes. Once again, we start after Sideways gets kind of in a sticky spot. And Charlie, what'd you think?
So did you mean sticky like Spider-Man sticky, or
no, sticky like I'm hanging off a building and I'm gonna die?
so totally Spider-Man sticky, because clearly this is inspired by Spider-Man.
This is not sticky.
Okay, so regardless of how or what kind of sticky it is, I really enjoyed Sideways number 2. I felt like Sideways number 2 succeeded where Damage and Silencer failed, where all three of those books, they came out swinging, firing on all cylinders in the beginning, but issue number 2 didn't really work because I think some of the novelty wore off in those series. Whereas now in Sideways, like I said, we start off, the stakes are already high as soon as the book begins. It's interesting. And as the series is beginning to develop, it's really getting better, and it's really showing the potential to be great. So all in all, I think that so far, this is one of the best, if not the best, that we've seen so far out of the DC New Age of Heroes initiative. So,
I mean, I would agree with you insofar as the character of Sideways. I really enjoy the powers that he has, that he's a young kid. I think that he's not annoying. He's flawed, but in a way that can show some growth. I think that the problems that I see in this issue are entirely with the external new characters. The actual villain at the end, and the maybe villain, judgy guy called Tempest Fugonaut. Yeah. And I totally hate that name because it makes no sense in terms of the language, or the language that it's using, the languages that it's using. So it translates from the Latin and the Greek to time flies sailor. So, and that's not even what the guy does, so forget it.
Yeah. Ben, what do you think about Mr. Fugonaut?
Agreed. Not my favorite character ever. Mm-hmm. But no, the Sideways was good. It definitely, I think it lost a little momentum, but it also put a lot more story into it, a lot more like background into it. And that's what I could appreciate for it. Mm-hmm. Even though, Sideways sounds fine, but the rest of the names are kind of funny. Like, not quite there, but definitely a big improvement in my opinion. I just think of it compared to Damage. And I was a little disappointed with Damage. I'm not with Sideways. Sideways continues on doing pretty good. So, so it set that up pretty good for the next one.
Yeah.
So,
you know what else too? I think like we were mocking Mr. Fugonaut a little bit. I like the design a lot. I just don't like his name, which maybe I'll get over. But I definitely do like the design. As far as the maybe villain at the end, I don't like her design. I don't like her name. I don't really, not that I don't get her powers. I don't think I really like them either. We haven't really seen enough, but
I just don't think she's going to be that big of a part. So it was kind of, I mean, just the feel of it.
Yeah.
Like, you're here for a purpose. I think the purpose is to kind of show that Sideways is, can be a hero, and then we're done, and then we'll go on to real villains from there. So,
yeah, this is the unfamiliar, unranked opponent that's going to be knocked out in the first round.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it, like you said, Ben, it is just, she's playing a part right now that needs to be played. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I think if she's developed into, a mainstay character here in the series, I don't think it's going to work. But if she does just kind of show up, play her part, and then eventually leaves, I think it'll be great, because I think just the fact that we have, this space-time guardian, who's showing up saying, look, bad things are happening, like, you don't understand what you're doing. I think that the potential for there to be a great villain or some sort of, just terrible force, that's going to come out of somewhere and, wind up manifesting into several different villains over a long period of time. Like, that potential is great. So I don't think that we really need villains like we see at the end of this issue. We don't need the kind of villain that you can fist fight or, outsmart a little and wind up winning against. So,
well, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, exactly.
So next here we have Dry County. That's through Image by Rich Tommaso. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Tommaso.
More or less. Tommaso. Yeah. Put those accents where you're not supposed to. So this one's a little different. It's going for a crime comic, which this one was good. It kind of showed us a guy who's kind of lost with his life until he meets a girl in a way, and kind of starts on a different track. So, Dave, tell us what you thought.
Well, I think that part of the strength and part of the weakness of this book is that from right out of the box, it screams highbrow. The art is very particular, very stylized. I mean, it fits in with the scene of, like Art Deco Miami of the '80s. I mean, you can imagine that he's going to run into Crockett and Tubbs and all those guys around the corner. But it looks like Miami. It's very visual, stylistic, sequential art rather than a normal type of comic book. The story is a little bit more personal. It's not by any means a usual comic book type thing. I think that's going to be a problem with a lot of comic book readers. But in terms of something reaching for higher higher ground, I think that it's doing a pretty good job. I actually liked it quite a bit.
All right. Well, I personally enjoyed it just because I thought the writing was good and the story was good. And while it was good, like well written, it didn't pull me into it so much. It's not quite my comic book. The art, I think the art worked for it. No, it's just not my artwork. Like it just didn't pull me in, didn't draw me in.
Yeah, it's definitely unusual. Yeah.
Yeah. So once again, I read it. I enjoyed it. It moved the story right along. I had no problems with that. But in the end, it's not one that I'm going to keep going with.
I think it suffers from the individual issue of format as well. It appears to be much larger, in-depth story, character-driven, and it might be better served in a more graphic novel format rather than broken up into individual issues like it is. So I think, contrary to the impression that you're getting, you probably would have been better off, after there was 4 or 5 issues wrapped up together and then jumping into that way. My impression is that it would flow better if you had bigger chunks to take a look at.
Yeah, I think that the overall story is going to be great. It's probably going to make a great graphic novel, like you said, Dave. I think once we have a bigger picture, and more story than we really get here, because this really is just it's an introduction. I just think that where Dry County, I don't even want to say fails, it doesn't succeed as much as it could have, is really to generate interest for what's to come. I think at the end of this book, we can look back and say, hey, this was a, very stylized issue. It was very well written. It's interesting. It's a breath of fresh air. But I don't know if I necessarily want to keep reading it. And the reason for that is, I personally want to see more. I love the format, love the way everything looks, the way it feels. But, like you said, Ben, there's really nothing driving you to pick up issue number 2. So for me, it's a little tough. I do think that it's a very well-made comic. I think that it's interesting and it has great potential. But just like you said, Dave, I think this one is going to be something that needs to be read as a whole. Because and it's not even that this issue feels incomplete per se. I just think it's definitely going to work much better once we get more of that big picture story.
Okay, so next, DC's Young Animal, Eternity Girl. So for people who don't know what this one's about, this is a young woman who really strove to be the best of the best at everything. That includes athletics, that includes master degrees, this includes being a superhero. So she becomes a superhero who defeats her enemy, essentially, and is then left with a, what am I doing with myself? Gets a little bit down with depression. First off, we see her jumping off a bridge. So definitely a darker side of it right now. What do you say, guys? I think we all kind of agree with this one. We're all a little disappointed.
As much as I'm liking Dry County for the kinds of chances it's taking, the kind of look that it's going after, the kind of story that it's trying to tell, I think Eternity Girl is trying to do much of the same kinds of things, but I don't think it works. One of the things that's also a little bit unusual about this title is the artwork as well. But where I would prefer a ugly character being drawn beautifully, what I'm seeing, and I could be wrong, but it's jumping off the page at me as an ugly drawing. It's just not working for me. I mean, I think I know what the attempt is trying to be. I just don't think they stuck the landing particularly well.
Yeah, I happen to agree. I'm not a big fan of the look of this book at all. Look, I hear depressed superhero, and I'm just saying, sign me up. Let's do this thing. That's what I want to hear. And I love the idea, like you brought up, Ben, about, how Caroline, she was going to be the best in everything, and then she succeeded, and then once she succeeded, bad things happen, because now what? You're a superhero, what are you going to do? And I think that typically, in the modern superhero tale, we always have something else. We always have another world-ending event. We always have another villain, someone hell-bent on revenge. We always have something else. So when you come to think that, hey, what if that didn't actually happen? What if, the event that turned someone into a superhero also turned someone into a supervillain, and then one of them won? I think that's very interesting. But it just didn't. Something's missing. I don't know if it's just the artwork's really not connecting with me. It really didn't work as well for me as I think it should have. Like I said, this is kind of story. I read the description. I say, yeah, I absolutely have to pick this up and read it. And I was disappointed.
Yeah. I think we've had similar experiences with other of the Young Animals titles. That the impression is that they're trying very hard to be something really special. And what's obvious is not so much that they're special, it's just that they're trying really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, they go out of their way to explain how how Carolyn's power turns her into a sort of an elemental type power, and they kind of go into this being and non-being kind of philosophical mumbo jumbo, and again they don't really explain it well. They just kind of throw it out there to be impressive without really reeling it in to relate to the overall story with any kind of effective way.
Yeah, I hate this week's been a little different for me because I've had these two comics. I have Eternity Girl and I have Dry County, neither of which grabbed me. Like, and really I'm gonna be like, yeah, I want to read this and continue on, but in two totally different ways for me. You had Dry County, which was just, to me, extremely well done, extremely well written, and I can see how the story is really good and how people are really going to enjoy this. I just didn't. It just wasn't my kind. But then you have Eternity Girl, where I can blatantly see the reasons I don't like it. Yeah. Once again, as you guys, really everything you guys were saying, the artwork didn't super grab me. The overall story, while it started off and I was kind of interested, by the end, I didn't really want anything to do with it. So yeah, I could definitely see I have a lot of problems with it. But there you go. That's why I read a lot of comics.
Yeah.
So lastly, we will discuss a comic book we all love. Yes. Port of Earth Volume 1. So finally, it collects Port of Earth 1 through 4. And I think, again, we have nothing bad to say about it. If anything, we think it's even better as a volume than it was as individual comics. Charlie, I think you mentioned that issue 3 is kind of slowed down a little bit when you read them individually, but you put them to here and you don't even notice.
Yeah, exactly. Once you have all the first 4 issues of the series, put together back to back, and you have the opportunity to read the collection cover to cover, the overall feel of the story, without that time in between issue, that month or 2 weeks or however long it takes to get from issue 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, with that time completely eliminated from the equation, Port of Earth already was a phenomenal reading experience, right? But now when you have all 4 issues, the first 4 issues available, you don't lose any momentum because you're still thinking of what you just read. You're focusing on the more interesting aspects, and you're also given some more time to sit and think and really find yourself a part of this story. That's one of the most beautiful aspects of Port of Earth, is that it's a rich world. Reading it is a fully immersive experience. And like I said, when you pick it up in this volume here, and everything's collected, it feels so good and it works so well together. So I absolutely loved this volume. We talked about all 4 issues, reviewed all 4 issues. Here we go again. I'm just really happy that we get another week that we can talk about Port of Earth on the podcast here.
Well, and we get to go back and look at it. One of the things that I didn't spend a whole lot of time with when on the first run through were those dossiers about the spacecrafts and the different alien races and what have you. And somehow, now that we've got the big picture of this invasion armed with briefcases, it becomes really more important to try to understand how difficult and hostile these aliens really are. And having it all in one place is really helpful.
Yeah, as always, I loved it still. Really everything I've been saying before. Like, it's got that great story. It's got that great art that just works perfectly with it. I just absolutely loved it. So,
like I said, it's an ideal introduction, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens next. And rereading this just, brought me back to reading issue number 1 and saying this is unlike anything I've read, and getting super excited all over again. So,
all right, so let's move on to our picks of the week. Charlie, start us off.
All right, so it was another pretty good week. I think if I have to settle on just one, and I don't think we've really talked about the series too much, it's Mr. Miracle number 7. Tom King and Mitch Gerards have been doing a phenomenal job with the series. And now 7 issues in, you know, if you've started from the beginning, the feel of this book is unlike anything you've read. The look of this book, unlike anything you've read. And it's really exciting. And in this one, a new god is born. I mean, that's awesome. Like, when's the last time? I don't even know when I've seen a child being born in a comic book before. I'm sure it's happened. You know, I can't remember if I've seen it. But another book, just wonderfully written. Illustrations are amazing, and it moves at a pace that's, you know, it's very intimate. You know, it doesn't move slow, but it allows you the time to really dig deep and really enjoy everything that you're reading, you know, to think about it, to have this sort of conversation with the characters and with the author. And I can't say enough about it. So pick of the week is definitely Mr. Miracle number 7 for me.
All right. Well, I'm going to say mine. I will continue, even though I've said it all before. The Flash came out, Flash number 42, I believe. So they continue to fight Grodd, and great villain. What can I say? And I've just gotten into Flash again recently, so I'm going to continue to recommend this. It continues the storyline of fighting Flash. It continues showing a little bit of a darker side of some of our superheroes, which, you know, sometimes you kind of like. So I enjoyed having that being thrown in there and seeing what happens there. So that's my pick of the week, is Flash number 42.
And for me, it's another finale. It's Slots number 6. It's a story about this down on his luck boxer. And one of the great things about this finale is that everything you'd expect to happen happens, except it's completely turned upside down. I mean, it both meets expectations and totally defies expectations, which is a cleverness and a twist that I always look forward to, I always want to find, and I'm always very satisfied when somebody finally pulls it off. And you know, if you're looking for something that's really kind of this gritty, noirish kind of story, it's only 6 issues. I'm sure the trade paperback will be coming out soon. It's definitely worth checking out. You know, it's this gritty story of this boxer in Vegas and his son named Lucy, and you know, it's good stuff. It's really a lot of fun, and they ended the series well, and it's definitely worth checking out.
Great. All right, everyone. Well, that concludes this week's show. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like this video, and visit thebrazenbull.com for more great comic book content. Till next week, folks.
Adios.
Bye.